with faith, it's always open to doubt. But that's why it's faith. And the most important things in life are always open to doubt.
Hello, I'm Gary. Now, some people call me a very tall man. I've travelled to the UK to see the sights, enjoy the delightful English weather, and to meet some wonderfully inspiring people. Today's guest is Nicky Gumbel, and this is the second part of our chat. What a delight to meet the man whose name is synonymous with the Alpha courses, now all around the world.
I can't believe I've been given the opportunity to say this. More tea, Vicar.
Do you know, Gary, I would love another cup of tea, but actually, if I'm really honest, although the first cup was so good, I actually every day I drink 3 cups of coffee. I have one when I get up, one at 10 o'clock, and one at lunchtime. So would you mind if I moved on to coffee at this stage?
No problem at all, Vicar. No problem at all.
Very kind.
It was absolutely delightful looking back on what we chatted about last time we were together, Nicky. And we were talking about loneliness in this day and age when it seems that we're more connected than ever before. Is loneliness more than just being physically alone?
I think that there is what you might call a cosmic loneliness. That we are created for relationships. We're created for relationships with one another, but supremely we're created for a relationship with God. And until we find that relationship, there'll always be this sense of emptiness. And you're looking back, so I was an atheist, and then I encountered Jesus. I was not looking for anything. I was not going around saying, I've got a void in my life, I'm spiritually hungry. But looking back, I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't content. I was always searching for the next thing in life that I thought would provide whatever it is that would fill the void that meant that I was never satisfied with whatever I had. And it was only when I encountered Jesus that I realized that the void had been filled and that I had a spiritual hunger. So, I have a hunger for food. Every morning I get up and I want breakfast. And I don't miss breakfast, but I also have a spiritual hunger. And that can only be satisfied with a relationship with God. So for me, the most important thing at the start of the day is to read the Bible, because Jesus said, human beings don't live by bread alone. He didn't say, you don't need bread. We clearly do need bread, but not bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. In other words, we need communication with God. We need to have that spiritual hunger satisfied. And human relationships are wonderful and so important and part of what we're made for, but they don't ultimately satisfy the spiritual hunger with which we're created.
My dad, in the last 15 years of his life, every year he read the Bible from Genesis through to Revelation, so at least 15 times, and I suspect before that many times, but he made a point of sort of being very disciplined about it. Was that overkill?
Well, I personally, and I know this is not true for everyone, I can't do without breakfast, and I can't do without, I can't think of a day in my life since I encountered Jesus, which is nearly 50 years ago, when I haven't read the Bible. And I don't do it because I feel I have to. I do it because I really want to hear what God says. I feel hungry. Each morning I want to hear, Lord, what are you saying to me? And people say, well, how do you build a relationship with someone you can't see? Well, you can talk to them, but even more important than talking to God, which is prayer, is listening. and you can listen to God in prayer, but supremely the way God speaks to us is through his word. So why would you not want, how do you build a relationship with your wife? You've been married 47 years, I think. So communication must be absolutely key to those 47 years. And it's the same with a relationship with God, with Jesus. It's communication, it's hearing his voice.
So how do you read the Bible? Is it like start at Genesis and 3 chapters and then the next day, chapter 4?
On the 1st of January, 1991, so Sandy Miller was the vicar here, now Bishop Sandy Miller, and for Christmas, 1990, he gave me a Bible in 1 year, and I started reading that on the 1st of January, 1991. So that is over 30 years ago. And every year since then, I've read the Bible in a year. And it's broken down into a psalm or proverb, New Testament and Old Testament. And if you don't have time, you maybe some days you just do the psalm and the New Testament. But so I've done that for all those years. And then in 2009, my wife Pippa and I started sending. Well, what happened was there was a guy came on Alpha, a guy called Ramez, and he said, "I've just encountered Jesus." He was a highly intelligent guy, but very interested in developing a relationship with God. And he said, "I can't find any way to get really into the Bible." So I said, "Okay, well, we'll send you our thoughts each day." So on the 1st of January, we sent our thoughts to him, and then we thought we'll send them to the rest of the congregation as well. So we sent them out to this was 2009. 1st of January, we sent out our thoughts to him and to the whole congregation. And then we developed it, and then it turned into an app, and now there are, I think, well over 1 million people doing it every day. So it's basically, there's a little bit on the Psalm, a little commentary, a little bit on the New Testament, a little commentary, a little bit on the Old Testament, a little commentary, and there's Pippa Adds, which is the favourite bit of everyone I meet, which is her comment. And so there's a little bit of the Bible, a little bit of explanation, and a prayer. And I put out on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, put out a verse for the day, thought for the day, prayer for the day. So it's just a way. So if you really don't have any time, you can just do the verse for the day. But if you do have time, you can do there's an express version, which is 15 minutes, or there's the classical version, which is 25 minutes. David Suchet reading the Bible beautifully, and then an attempt just to help people to understand, it's about feeding the soul. How does it's not so much a commentary, it's just sort of, how does this passage apply? What could God be saying to you through this passage? Because that's what we need to hear each day is, Lord, what are you saying to me today? So
you read it and you believe it.
Yes. Yeah. And you believe that God will speak to you through it. It's that expecting God to speak to you. Rick Warren, I interviewed Rick Warren at the leadership conference at the Albert Hall one time, and he said, "Why does God use me?" He said, "The answer is because I expect him to." And why does God speak through the Bible? Because you expect him to. So you have to come to it with an expectancy. That's faith. Faith, one of the definitions of faith is expectancy. And so if you come to the Bible expecting God to speak to you, he will speak to you.
Now, I don't know what you think about music, but when you get to heaven, the official music of heaven is Southern Gospel. And of course, that's led in the world at the moment by Bill Gaither. And he quotes a verse and it's turned into a beautiful song called "I Believe, Help Thou My Unbelief."
Yes.
Now, is that not a contradiction then?
No, I don't think it is, because that's what someone said to Jesus. I believe, help my unbelief. Because faith and doubt are two sides of the same coin. you cannot have faith without doubt. With faith, it's always open to doubt. But that's why it's faith. And the most important things in life are always open to doubt. But they're real.
I can understand everything going great with blessings, but when things go wrong, is that not when the doubt comes in?
Life is, as Kay Warren says, life is much more difficult than you think it's going to be. And there are always going to be challenges and tests to our faith. And there'll be things in our life. I can look back on my life. I look back at a time when one of my very closest friends, who I was playing squash with, died on the squash court, had a heart attack. We played squash together for years, and then one time on a squash court that was in the most sort of deserted place, he had a heart attack and dropped dead, leaving 6 children aged between 6 and 16. And I'll never know why that happened. We're told that in everything God works for the good for those who love him. And sometimes things happen and you think, oh, why did that happen? And you think, oh, I understand, those things work for the good. But then there are other things that are a mystery. I don't know why that happened. I don't think I'll never know this side of heaven. But that night I went at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was in July 1996, so it's a long time ago, but it still is something that it's heartbreaking to see his wife still, who's a very good friend, and the children, 5 of whom I'd married, and one of whom I would have married if she hadn't been the other end of the world. But I still don't know why. And I went out at 5 o'clock in the morning and I said, Lord, I just don't know why this has happened, but I'm not going to stop trusting you. And I think that faith is trusting even when you don't understand what God is doing. And I think everyone has things in their life that they don't understand why God has allowed it to happen. It may be an illness, it may be a relationship breakdown, but there are always things in our life we just don't understand why. And we won't understand this side of heaven, but we have to faith is keeping trusting even when you don't understand.
We were talking a little earlier on about loneliness and how it's sort of prevalent today. You can be in a big church and still feel incredibly lonely. How do you get around that?
Well, I think that if you go into a big church and just go in and go out, then you probably won't find community. But I think that most churches have a very good way in. And we've always encouraged people, if they're new to HCB, to come to join Alpha, where everyone else on the course is new, because they're probably people who are not Christians or not churchgoers. So you meet a whole lot of people who are also new to church like you, and then you form community through an Alpha group, and then that becomes a Connect group. Some people say, well, I've done Alpha already. I've done it in another church. I don't want to do it again. Then you can join a Connect group. And most churches have some, and they may not call it a Connect group, but most churches have some kind of smaller groups where you can meet. It's very hard on Sunday without massive, if it's a big church. But on midweek, you can connect. And every Monday morning, we have a Zoom call, Pippa and I, with Sandy Miller, who was our old vicar, my predecessor as vicar of HTB, and his wife Annette, Nicky and Cilla Lee, who are the people who led me to faith almost 50 years ago, and others who are very good friends. We're pretty much, we've only been married 45 and a half years, so we're pretty much the newlyweds on the group. But it's an amazing group. And that's a place where it's down as an hour to pray. Actually, we laugh for 57 minutes and pray for 3. But it's connection. It's that friendship. And everyone needs friends. You need people around you who will support you and pray for you. And that's where you find it in these small communities in the church.
COVID has been around for the last few years now, and a lot of people since COVID have not gone back to church. What's your take on that?
I think when COVID came, people started watching online, watching church online. We did it. Yeah, I was vicar of HTB at the time. We had 11 services on 6 different sites every Sunday, and I would try and get to as many as possible. Sometimes I think the record I got to was 7 or possibly 8, but Sunday was like a totally exhausting day. COVID came along, and we did one service online, which we recorded during the week, and I watched it on Sunday. And Sunday I thought, oh, this is nice. This is a very easy life. And I think, to begin with, people thought, oh, I don't need to go to church. I can watch church, and I can eat breakfast at the same time, do the washing up, and I've got the rest of the day. And no travelling to church, no getting the children ready. Children can all be in their pajamas. This is really good. But I think what people began to discover is it's not quite the same thing as being in the room. And when you gather together and the Holy Spirit is there and you're in community, there's something that can't be replaced by watching something on a screen. And I've noticed that churches that are now beginning to, I think certainly HTB, where I was, is fuller than it was pre-COVID. That may be because they've got a new vicar, but but I know a number of churches. The church we were at last Sunday, so we're visiting all the church plants, and we were in Bristol and talking to the vicar there who planted from HTB, Toby Flint, who's on the Alpha film series. He said they thought that after COVID everyone would return, but they didn't. But now they have, and more than the people that they had pre-COVID.
What about AI as something for church people to take advantage of? A friend of mine I saw on Facebook the other day asked some chat thingy to write a sermon for him.
Yes.
And it did.
Yeah.
And it looked pretty good.
Yeah, and you can write, you can say, I'm preaching on the resurrection this Sunday, but I'd like to do it, I'd like to have it the depth of Tim Keller. I'd like to have the humour of Judah Smith. I'd like to have the passion of, T.D. Jakes. And I'd like to have, Anyway, so please could you write my talk with all of those things? And in 10 seconds, it'll come up with your talk. Yeah, I've tried that. Yeah, I think, AI is going to be unbelievably useful in all kinds of ways. But I think ultimately we've got to hear from the Lord what he wants to say.
I guess it's human nature to look back and maybe view things with regret.
Yes.
But let's look forward. We are both of us well past 60. So what does the next, or what do the next, say, 20, 30 years look like for you?
Well,
assuming they've got to give you those years, of course.
Well, if the Lord spares me, I'm not expecting that long, but I'm hoping that the Lord will spare me for the next 10 years, because I am very set on this date, the 17th of April 2033, where with the 2000th anniversary of the resurrection of Jesus. And the next 10 years, if the Lord spares us, Pippa and I have dedicated our lives to trying to make, as part of making the gospel of Jesus available to everyone on the planet. For us, our part is to make Alpha available to everyone on the planet by that date. So that's what we're hoping for the next 10 years.
So I guess, having said that, you don't want the second coming to happen before then.
Well, Pippa announced, but we were just at a church in Bristol, and someone asked, what about the next 10 years and this? And so Pippa said, well, as you all know, the 17th of April 2033 is the day that Jesus is coming back. So she meant to say the anniversary of the resurrection. So she announced the date of the second coming is the 17th of April 2033. So you've heard it from her.
That's great.
Jesus has given us 2,000 years to get the message out. Wouldn't it be wonderful if by the 2000th anniversary of his resurrection, everyone on the planet had the opportunity to hear about him? So the Bible translators are working, they've come together to get the Bible, the New Testament, into 99.96% of the languages in the world. Every language will have 25 chapters of the New Testament. Rick Warren is working on Bible, a believer, a body of Christ in every community. We met in Rome with 70 Catholic communities, all of whom have a vision for that date. So our part in that, and it's very much a part of something much, much bigger, working together with everybody else. But our part is to make Alpha available to everyone on the planet by the 17th of April 2033. So that's what we're working full-time on. We're working on a new film series. There's now a totally Chinese film series, and we want people to be able to hear. So the Chinese film series is all Chinese presenters, Chinese vox pops, Chinese filmed in China and with Chinese producers. And so to make Alpha available to everyone in their own heart language by the 17th of April 2033.
Is Alpha still as relevant today as it was those many years ago?
Well, I'm not committed to Alpha at all. I'm committed to getting the message of Jesus out. At the moment, I haven't found a better way than Alpha. So that's why I'm always in an Alpha small group. This is our 100th small group in a row. We've done more than that, but 100 in a row. From October 1990, we've done it 3 times a year, and I've never missed one. So last night, I was in an Alpha small group, and I could see the changes already. This is week 4 last night. I could see the changes that have begun to happen in each of the people in that small group. And so it's working. And while it's working, we're going to continue using it. If it stops working, we'll drop Alpha. If I find a better way, we'll drop Alpha. But while it's still working and while I still haven't found a better way, I'll still doing Alpha.
But I've got a final question. Why is the gospel so important?
Because Jesus is so important. This is the almost unbelievable thing. It is unbelievable, actually. But I always think, when you look at the fact that we're here, that's a fact. We are here. That's one thing we do know. Did God create all this? Impossible to believe. Did it all come out of nothing? Impossible to believe. They're both impossible to believe. So you can't get there through that route. But if the resurrection of Jesus actually happened, which I believe it did, and that there's good historical evidence for it, then that suggests that this world does have a creator, and that creator is to be seen in and through the lens of the one who was raised from the dead, Jesus. So Jesus is the key to history. So I'm a lawyer. I come from a legal background. People say, oh, there's no evidence for God. Yes, there is evidence. It's not scientific evidence. You can point to the fact that something's come out of, how does something come out of nothing? You can point to the fine-tuning of the universe. But I don't think that actually gets you there. There could be other explanations. But what is the explanation for the resurrection of Jesus? To me, that is good historical evidence. That's all you have in a legal case is good historical evidence. No one is convicted on anything other than good historical evidence. And this is the same. This is good historical evidence that Jesus was raised from the dead. That means he is alive now. That means you can have a relationship with him. That means in him you can find the meaning and purpose of your life. In him you can find love, you can find forgiveness, you can find peace, you find joy, you find hope. So that's why this is the most important message to get out. And that's why the most loving thing that you can do for anyone is tell them the good news about Jesus. And the greatest injustice in the world is for people never to have heard that. That's why we want to focus the next 10 years in doing everything we can to deal with that injustice and to do the most loving thing we can, which is to bring the good news of Jesus to everyone on the planet.
Nicky Gumbel, thank you. Thank you very much for chatting.
Thanks,
God
Gary.
bless you.
Thanks,
Thank
Gary.
you.